All right, welcome back to Falcon Blues TV, and I'm here for our West Ham preview, and I'm joined by none other than Everton goal scoring hero, West Ham hero, Tony Cottee. Tony, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
You're welcome, Dave. It's a pleasure, mate.
Good stuff. Now, before we start, I just want to point out the little ticker tape on the bottom. So, yes, we are talking to goal scoring hero Tony Cottee. Yes, up the fucking toffees. Yes, we want you to like and subscribe, but we also want you to donate to Paul's Hill Dickinson sleepover, which is on the 10th of October. So you can type the link in, or you can click on the little QR code that you'll see on your screen when I do this edit. So every little helps. So please donate when you can, and we appreciate that. Thank you. So Tony, without further ado, let's get straight into it. How are things? You doing all right?
I'm all good, thanks, Dave. Yeah, all good. I've got a couple of nice little breaks coming up, a couple of little holidays. That one's for a wedding, and one's just to have a get away from it type of holiday.
Yeah.
But me being me, sadly, I've arranged it to coincide with Everton versus West Ham, and I can't take full responsibility for it, Dave, because like when I booked my flight back on the Monday night, the game was on a Saturday at 3 o'clock. But as all the fans listening or watching this will know, like, you get about 6 weeks notice nowadays, and then all of a sudden all your plans change. So as much as I'd love to be at the new stadium, I will be flying home from Greece on that at that particular time, so I won't be able to watch the game. I've already set the record button. I'm looking forward to watching it the following morning. But yeah, it's I'm actually quite gutted because Everton asked me to be their guest and come up for the game, which I would have done, but it just wasn't to be. But I will try and get up there for later on in the season.
Spot on, and you're always welcome in Kirby as well if you want to come up for an evening.
Thank you very much. It's very kind. Very kind.
So let's just look at the weekend's football then. So we'll talk about the Merseyside derby. Obviously, Everton losing 2-1 to Liverpool. For me, I don't think I think the first half we let ourselves down in a big time. Second half was a much better improved Everton. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Dave, I didn't see the game live. I was in the pub. I actually went to the West Ham Palace game, so obviously I can give you a much more informed opinion of what happened at West Ham rather than what happened at Anfield. But the game was on in the background. I watched bits and pieces of it, and from what I saw, you're quite right. All of a sudden they're sort of 2 goals down, and as much as we don't like to admit it, they are a good side, Liverpool. And if you go 2 goals down at Anfield, you're going to be chasing your arse off trying to get back in the game. But it looked like it was a much better performance. A fantastic goal from Everton. Really enjoyed the goal and the finish. And and once they got that goal, I thought, I'm surely going to get the equaliser here. And that was my actual prediction, by the way. I went for a 2-2 draw, so I was I was quite confident. Bearing in mind, the way Everton have been galvanised under David Moyes, I was quite confident that they could go to Anfield and get a result. Not necessarily win the game, but if you go there and get a draw, it's always a good point to get from the game. So yeah, a little bit disappointed they didn't get that equalising goal. But as I say, you give yourself too much of a mountain to climb when you go 2 down, I think.
Exactly. What did you think? What did you make of the bizarre yellow card that came in Dewsbury Hall? Because I know that's been a big talking point a lot. I've heard it on TalkSport, seen it on the ref watch on Sky Sports as well. It just doesn't make sense to people. People are still scratching their heads as to how that actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, just some of the modern day refereeing and decisions. I've got to be honest, David, does my head in. I mean, not only do we have to contend with VAR and people sort of officiating the game from West London, when the game's at Anfield. You got referees, giving, there's no need to give a yellow card. Just if a player's trying to take it quickly. If he does it twice or 3 times, I get it. Yeah. But if you're just trying to take a quick free kick, you can't be booking players for taking a quick free kick. That's just a referee being far too official, and it's not about the referees. It's about the players. It always has been. And let the players get on with it. There too many times referees are trying to blow their whistle and stop the game. They don't play advantage, and just the players always have done. And even more so nowadays, because you don't get all the tackles. When I used to play for Everton back in the 80s and 90s, you're getting kicked all over the place at Anfield. But there isn't that part of the game now. So the players sort of can run the game by themselves anyway. You don't need to keep blowing the whistle and giving silly yellow cards. And and the problem is then if it didn't happen, but it could have done, you could have given the yellow card, and all of a sudden there's another tackle goes in that probably is a yellow card, and he's got sent off for 2 ridiculous offences. So yeah, I just thought it was poor refereeing. I got to be honest.
Yeah, it just seems like that could almost, for me, I was thinking about it a bit deeper. That could set a precedent with that. I mean, you normally you get, if you take a quick free kick, it gets pulled back. You just get on with it. You moan that you weren't allowed to take it quick. But then to see a yellow card, it's like, well, is someone else going to get booked for doing exactly the same thing? It'll be something that you'll never see again.
Yeah.
I think you won't see it.
Well, the thing is, Dave, I've always said with referees, I just want them to be consistent. And if they are consistently bad, I'll actually put up with that as long as you know they're going to be consistently bad and you know what you're going to get. But when, 1 week they'll give a yellow card and then he'll probably get tugged by Howard Webb and say, you can't be doing that. And the next time it happens, he won't give a yellow card,
Yeah.
which is not fair on Everton or Dewsbury Hall for that,
Yeah.
from that point of view, because he might miss an important game later in the season because of what's happened with that silly booking. So, those sort of decisions can have effects on players and clubs. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, just referee, just keep out the game, let the players get on with it.
Yeah. So let's look at West Ham Palace. Palace in an absolutely amazing run of form. I think it's 17 games without a defeat at the moment. A 2-1 win over West Ham at London Stadium. You were there, I think, it as well, did you say?
Yes, I was at the game. Yeah, I mean, for my sins, I've got season ticket at West Ham, so yeah, it's not been good for the last couple of seasons, but yeah, I mean, it was a strange game, really. I mean, the two previous home games, West Ham had been battered by Tottenham and Chelsea, but it wasn't a battering from Palace, but it was just a bit of a non-event game, really. One of those games where the first half sort of went by and West Ham ended up a goal down, and then they had to be fair to them, they had a real go at the start of the second half. They got their goal back. Jarrod Bowen scored, who obviously is West Ham's top player. And, they got to 1-0, had a couple of half chances. But as soon as the Palace goal went in, the second goal, it was just nothing happened. There was about another 20 minutes left of the game. And Palace just done all what they had to do, saw the game out. And yet another, 3 home games and 3 defeats, which is not a good start for West Ham.
That's it. I mean, that's taking you to. I'm sorry if I'm giving you these stats, by the way, Tony. But it's putting you 1 win in 5 games, 18th place and you can see the 13 during that time. With just being in that, I know it's very, very early doors, but is Graham Potter on thin ice at the moment? But is it the team? Is it the manager? Is it a combination of the two where it's just not working for you? Because everyone thought Potter coming in. I mean, even Everton were looking at Potter at one point and thinking, "Oh, this could be, the manager that we need, for his heroics at Brighton and how well he done." I think that's what West Ham we're looking at rather than his Chelsea form. But what is going on with Graham Potter and the team at the moment? What needs to change?
Well, I think it's probably going back 2 to 3 years to where Everton were, really. I mean, you're quite right. You mentioned the manager, you mentioned the players, but then you've also got the people that are running the club. And as we know, there was a lot going on off the field for Everton, makes things very difficult. And then the fans get a little bit angry and a little bit tense, and then you start protesting. And it's a very similar scenario to what happened at Everton. Everton quite obviously now have ended up with a fantastic manager, and I for one was absolutely gutted that he left West Ham because of the job that he done. He done a wonderful job, won them their first trophy in 43 years, and they couldn't get him out quick enough. And I've never been able to get my head around that. Obviously, Lopetegui was poor, and I'm disappointed with how things have gone for Graham Potter so far. I like him as a guy. I've been to the training ground, had a nice cup of tea with him. He's a really nice guy. But the problem with football management, as we all know, it's about results, and you can be the nicest guy in the world, but if you're not getting results, you're going to be in trouble. And the way they've started, and there's a lot of speculation, probably that you wouldn't see up on Merseyside, but a lot of speculation about down here about who's going to, be getting the next West Ham manager, etc. And that. So he's actually under real pressure, and with the results could go against West Ham, and they certainly could be bottom of the league by the time they play, or if not, last from 19th position by the time they get to play Everton. So it's going to be a big game for West Ham. The one thing I would say on a positive from West Ham's point of view is they probably will play better away from home. There was protests and all sorts of stuff going on at the weekend, and sometimes when it ain't going right, Everton have probably had it as well. When if you're not getting the results at Goodison, but you can go to an away game and play with a little less fear. And, so I think from that point of view, West Ham might put in a better performance than what they've been doing recently. But, coming to Everton's new stadium and that, it's going to be a real tough game for them.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I can completely see it. And when you put it like that, the pressure from the fans, pressure on the board as well, the way that, the fans are trying to get one board out, get a new board in, get new owners in to, be new custodians for the club. And it was a really tough time for Evertonians. And, you've obviously seen it as an Evertonian and now seeing it as a West Ham fan as well, Tony. It's unfair to see clubs like West Ham in that situation, because they are capable of more. I think you just touched on it there, that Everton have gone into a new stadium and all this new confidence. I think that's what you wanted as well when you moved to London Stadium from Upton Park. But you've got such a rich heritage of Upton Park being that ground for fans, not just home fans but away fans as well, and that atmosphere and the melting pot that you've got of West Ham fans in Upton Park hasn't really transferred over to the London Stadium. And
yeah. And there's a simple reason for that, Dave, is because it's not a football stadium. I don't know whether you've been to the London Stadium, but I've always said, and I'll say it to you tonight, it's a fantastic stadium, but it's not a stadium designed for football. You've got to take that concert there next summer. It'd be a fantastic concert. But the stadium, it was built and designed to house athletics.
Yeah.
And sadly, the current board that sort of was in charge when it happened, obviously we're talking nearly 10 years ago now, but from the moment West Ham left Upton Park and went to the London Stadium, the fans haven't been happy. And then, of course, if you then add in the fact that you've had a poor start to the season, then the grumblings are getting louder and louder now, and there's a lot of call to change the ownership, which is easier said than done. And in the meantime, the manager's got to get on with it, and the players have got to get on with it. So it's difficult times, but I think you do come out the other side. I keep using an example. You've only got to look at Everton, all what they went through over the last 5 years. Nearly getting relegated. Was it twice, 3 times, whatever it was? The problems with the board and the owners, and points deductions. At least West Ham haven't had that. But all the stuff that went on with Everton, and if you look at things now, you've got a fantastic new stadium. You've got a wonderful manager, and you've just taken a £100 million player on loan, who I'm a massive fan of. And things are looking really good for Everton, and I'm really, really pleased. I've always said, everyone knows West Ham's my first team, but Everton are my second team, and I want nothing but the best for the club. I want them to do well and progress. And I did say at the start of the season, and I'll stick by my prediction, I think Everton will finish in the top 10 in the Premier League this year.
So for West Ham to pull themselves out of it, and the manager, for me, seems like a big change, and it's got to be a big decision by the club. But what's got to change in West Ham to pull yourselves out of any kind of spiral before it gets worse?
Oh, I think in terms of changing things, football is very much a game of basics. And if you look at the facts, West Ham have conceded 7 goals from corners. Out of the 13 you mentioned, 7 of them have been from corners, and you can't do that in the Premier League. When you got people like Declan Rice swinging the ball in the box, we haven't even played Arsenal yet. But you've got to defend properly, and it's just a bit of a full house at the moment for West Ham. I think the goalkeeping situation, they haven't settled on who the number 1 goalkeeper is. You've got a back four that's very shaky and conceding from corners. You've got a midfield where there's not a lot of legs in terms of getting around the pitch. And then up front, we either play with no centre forward, or you play the centre forward and they're not scoring goals. So, it's a classic mix of, at the moment, there's not a lot right at the club at the moment. Now, it could change, Dave. Things change very quickly in football. If West Ham come up to Everton and win 3-0 at Everton, and everyone will be happy and, saying, oh, they're back on track. Don't forget they won 3-0 at Forest, which was, I know Forest haven't had a particularly good start, but they're still a good team.
That's still a big result, definitely.
Yeah, it was still a really good result. So, West Ham are capable of coming to Everton and getting a result, but, they've just got to do the basics better. Otherwise, Everton will win the game.
Yeah. So looking to Next Monday. It's actually Monday today. It is, isn't it? Yeah, it's Monday today. It's the 22nd. So obviously with Tony being away next week, we're doing this now and we're posting this later in the week. But Everton have Wolves in the cup tomorrow away. I think that's going to be a game that Everton we need to jump back from that Liverpool defeat. I know you can say, okay, we'll just lost to the champions, that are cracking side and everything, but I think Everton need to push on again. You know, we need to pick ourselves up from Saturday and go, okay, we've got to beat Wolves and set ourselves up for next Monday's game, because after tomorrow we've got a full week off. We had a full week off last week before we played Liverpool, but that didn't make a difference. So looking to tomorrow, obviously Wolves are in there thereabouts with West Ham at the moment as well. They're struggling at the moment. Do you think think Everton can get through that as well?
I think they need to get through it, Davey. I mean, it's a shame because obviously Wolves beat West Ham in the last round, so I might have been able to come up for the game tomorrow night. It would have worked into my schedule, but it wasn't to be. But but West Ham went 2-1 up. They played at Molineux 2-1 up, and then conceded 2 late goals. Strand Larson, who's a good player, scored a couple of goals. He was back. I think he came on as a sub, didn't he, at the weekend? So I think Everton have got to be a little bit careful with him because he's a good player. He's a proper number 9, and there's not that many number 9s around anymore that you can say they're going to score goals. And he had a good season last year, and he's a real handful. So they've got to watch out for him. But it's weird really because I think Everton and West Ham are two great clubs, two traditional historic clubs, and that but they both really are striving for the same thing, which is to have a good season in the Premier League. And I said it earlier, I say it again, I think they'll finish in the top 10. And if you finish 9th or 10th, it's a decent season. If you have a good season, you can do what Forest did last year and try and kick on and try and get into Europe. But I think above all, really, I think the Evertonians need to win a cup. It's 30 years. It's too long for Everton. I'm pretty certain that there's probably not been a 30-year gap in the club's history where they've not won a trophy. And every year it's ongoing, 31, 32, etc. And I know Everton, like West Ham, they've never won the League Cup, have they, Everton? So it's a tough ask to ask a group of players to win something that the club's never won in its whatever it's been going 60, 70 years, whatever the League Cup's been going. But it's a great opportunity if you can beat Wolves tomorrow night, and then you might get a nice home draw against one of the so-called lesser teams. You win that, you're in the quarterfinals. You've got a great chance. But the one thing I will say is I believe that David Moyes will go strong. He'll put out a strong team on the basis that Everton. There's no European football. You haven't got to save yourself for midweek games like all the other so-called top clubs have to do. Everton should just go out, play their best team. And I know people say, oh, yeah, but you've got to give the squad players a chance. Well, there's no point in doing that and getting knocked out. They need to get through, get into the 4th round, and then get a nice draw, and then you're on your way then. And winning games breeds confidence as well. If you win in the cup, there's nothing worse as a player getting knocked out the League Cup in the early rounds, and then all you've got is league games then up until January when you then get an FA Cup game. And when you're not in European football, it's a long season. If you get knocked out the cups early, it's a long season. So I mean, I expect them to go there and get a result. I think they've got enough good players. Wolves will probably do what they did against West Ham, rest a few players. So there's no reason why they can't go there and win the game.
Spot on. Okay, so I'm gonna finish this up then, Tony. It's been absolutely brilliant chatting to you, but I'm gonna put you on the spot now, and I'm gonna ask you for the score prediction for Monday. You know what, we had this last time. I interviewed you when you came up to Kirby, and I had you on the spot. Then I went, give me a score prediction, and I think you got it right. I think West Ham did win actually, as well. Wow. Yeah. I was full of confidence, and you were like, "No, I can see West Ham winning this." I was like, "Yeah."
Well, I'm certainly not full of confidence as we chat tonight, Dave. I mean, as things stand, I would say I would go for an Everton 2-1 win at the moment. And I don't like I certainly don't bet on football, but I don't like to sort of say that my team's going to lose. But looking at the facts at the moment and that it's hard to see West Ham going to Everton and winning. I think the stadium. I haven't been inside the new stadium. We've been outside it. I've sort of drove past it, but You know, the new stadium, I think, is going to be worth a lot of points to Everton, and I think there'll be a fantastic atmosphere there. The West Ham fans will be noisy as well,
Yeah.
and I think it'll be a good game. But I don't think it'll be. You know, I hope the Evertonians don't turn up thinking it's going to be an easy game against West Ham,
Yeah.
because it won't be. I don't think you don't get too many easy Premier League games nowadays. And listen, if you get a couple of early goals, yeah, of course you could go on and win 3 or 4. But I don't believe it'll be an easy game on the basis of what I said. I think West Ham can be dangerous as a counter-attacking team at times. So and when you've got like the likes of Bowen and Paqueta, you've got two
Yeah.
good players that can make things happen. So it won't be easy, but you'll be pleased to know, Dave, it's going to be Everton 2, West Ham 1.
That'll
Sadly,
do
from
me.
my point of view.
That will do me very much, Tony. Thank you very much for that. So, as I said, I'll wrap this up. So, make sure you're subscribing and liking the channel as always. Make sure you're clicking on the link to go and donate to Paul, or scan the little QR code, which will be on screen in a minute. Until then, up the fucking toffees, Colin Chong, Tony Cottee. Thank you so much.
Dave, you're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate.